A single sequence of breath, guarded in Tibetan monasteries for 5,000 years, and now measured in a 2024 Stanford lab, can raise the brain's growth factor by 300%, and it can quietly reshape the way you think, feel, and heal. This is not spiritual fluff. It is a meeting of the secret tradition and modern science. It is an offer, a short, repeatable practice that asks nothing more than 10 minutes of your day, and returns a mind less burdened by old pain, a body less tense, and a clarity you thought belonged only to the rare few. Helena Blavatsky would have listened and smiled. She taught that hidden wisdom moves when a seeker is ready, and she honored practices that unite body, mind, and higher sight. Imagine her steady voice guiding you now. The breath is a key. In the same breath you will find physiology and spirit, chemistry and conscience. The vagus nerve becomes a highway of healing. BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, acts like fertilizer for the neural garden where old traumas are rooted. When that garden blooms, your responses change. Your habits, your pain, your noise of worry, all begin to loosen. You will hear precise science, but you will also learn a ritual, a simple 5-5-5 sequence that asks for presence and grants. Formation. Expect immediate markers, tiny shifts in your hands, warmth in your chest, a thinning of mental static. Expect deeper change if you commit, sleep that recovers, decisions that come with calm, pain that loses its grip. The choice before you is fundamental and practical. Remain a passive consumer of information, or accept a small daily practice that asks nothing supernatural, but delivers a measurable, lived transformation. Stay with me. In the moments to come, you will be shown not only how to breathe, but how to take a vow with your nervous system. The ancient masters kept this for a reason. Now it is offered to you. Will you take it? A single measured breath, practiced with intention, can begin to redraw the map of your mind in a matter of days. This is the claim that has rippled from silent Himalayan caves into a bright lab at Stanford. The moment you hear that, something in you tightens and then leans forward. Why? Because the idea touches a deep human hunger to change without needing to rebuild your life, to heal pain that time has not solved, to reclaim clarity that stress has stolen. That hunger is old. The possibility is new. Between them sits a small ritual. Inhale 5 seconds, hold 5, exhale 5. A sequence kept for millennia in Tibetan monasteries, and now measured in a startling study to dramatically boost the brain's ability to grow and reconnect. Helena Blavatsky would have understood the hush around such a finding. She wrote that hidden doctrines sleep until a mind is ready to hear them. She would say the world of visible science has finally knocked on a door the adepts never opened because few were prepared to use what they found. Listen to that juxtaposition. A laboratory's sterile light confirms what candlelit monks guarded for 5,000 years. The tension between secrecy and disclosure creates a charge in the air, and you can feel it. Your own life has its private rituals, habits that keep you safe and habits that keep you small. The question is not whether breath can change the brain. The question is whether you will allow a small daily ritual to challenge the patterns that shape your days. There are 2 scenes to imagine. In one, a scientist in a white coat places electrodes, measures proteins, and writes numbers into a chart. In the other, a monk with weathered hands sits in a cold hall, focusing on the rise and fall of the chest as the light thins. Both scenes converge on one word: plasticity. The brain is not a fixed monument. It is a living field that grows new paths or repeats old ones. The substance at the heart of this transformation is called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a protein that feeds neurons, encourages new connections, and loosens the grip of old pain. When BDNF rises, the brain can learn new ways of being. That fact is both technical and intimate. It means that suffering is often not merely an event waiting in the body. Much of it is a habit held by neural circuits. Change those circuits, and you change the music that plays under your life. Here is a micro-conflict you can feel. Modernity prizes control through tools and information, but the deepest control we have comes through surrender. Surrender to rhythm, to breath, The breath is the paradoxical interface between will and the autonomic life that runs our hearts, digestion, and fear responses. Most people do not treat breath as a skill. They breathe by default and then wonder why. Their nervous system runs too hot. The monks were different. They trained the breath not as exercise, but as an instrument of attention and transformation. When a Stanford lab records a 300% rise in growth factor signals with a breath pattern similar to the one taught in Tibetan halls, the scholarly note and the sacred chant are suddenly companions in a long conversation. You might meet this claim with skepticism. Good. Skepticism keeps the mind honest. Some neuroscientists are cautious, even concerned, because rapid rewiring can destabilize as well as heal. The brain's architecture stores trauma as survival data. When we begin to erase old wiring quickly, the system can rearrange itself in ways that feel strange. People report shifts, tingling, a sense of warmth, a thinning of mental noise, sometimes within minutes. That immediacy is intoxicating and a little frightening. It raises a question. Are you prepared for rapid change? Do you have the psychological supports, the patience, the curiosity to sit with what emerges when the brain loosens old contracts with pain and fear? There is another micro-conflict here that will matter as you continue. Secrecy versus sharing. The Tibetan masters kept this technique for centuries because they understood the ethical weight of the practice. A tool that alters consciousness and clears deep patterns is not neutral. It reshapes identity. Now that modern labs reproduce the biological effects, the technique moves from secluded rite to public protocol. That transition raises questions about responsibility. How do we hand this practice into a world built on distraction? How do we teach it without turning it into another quick fix fad? There is urgency in these questions because for many, the temptation is to practice the pattern superficially, to chase sensations rather than to commit to a careful, steady use that supports real integration. Imagine, too, the personal micro-stories that sit next to the formal study. A man who has carried a tension headache for 15 years tries the sequence daily for a week and finds the pain disappear. A veteran with clenched nerves reports a softening of his reactive anger. An executive, used to adrenaline as currency, notices a clarity that brings better decisions. These reports are not proof in a scientific seal, but they are the kind of human data that moves us. They provoke another inward question. What have you accepted as permanent in your life that might be a learned pattern disguised as reality? What small daily act could begin to unlearn it? There is also a deeper psychological sliver to face, the fear of letting go. Change often asks us to loosen the very things we use to feel safe. Our beliefs about who we are, our routines, even our pain. The 5-5-5 breath asks for a kind of trust. Trust in the body's intelligence, trust in the possibility of being different, trust in a lineage that spans centuries. For those rooted in rationalism, the voice of Blavatsky will not be proof. Yet her insistence on blending a culture and science invites us to hold paradox. You can be practical and imaginative at once. You can accept laboratory data and ancient etiquette as complementary, not competing. Before you move on, feel the moral weight of an immediate choice. The practice requires almost nothing, 10 minutes a day, and yet it asks you to become a witness to your own nervous system. Will you treat that witness role casually? Or will you take it seriously? Will you let the lure of fast improvement seduce you into skipping the slow work of integration? Or will you hold steady when the first sensations trouble you? The next section will explain what BDNF actually does inside those neurons and why the vagus nerve matters. But first, there is a question that will stay with you. When a sacred practice and hard science agree that breath can open a door, who do? You become when you step through? Hold that question like a small stone in your palm. It will serve as the hinge for everything that follows. The story now moves from announcement to explanation, from the encounter of monastery and lab to the anatomy of change. You have seen the threshold. On the other side lies the work, the exact method, the felt signs, and the timeline of transformation. But thresholds are also tests. When you hear that breathing can change the brain, you will feel a pull. Toward skepticism, toward hope, or toward action? Which way will you move when the method is put in front of you? The answer will determine whether this knowledge becomes a fleeting curiosity or the beginning of a real shift. Imagine your next exhale quietly changing the wiring of your mind, so much so that habits you thought were permanent begin to soften, decisions become clearer, and old pain loses its grip. This is not poetry. It is the startling overlap of ancient practice and modern measurement, a breath pattern from Tibetan halls, now observed in a 2024 Stanford study to trigger massive increases in the brain's growth signals. The moment you accept that possibility, the life you carry in, automaticity becomes a question. What if a small daily practice could rewrite the script you have been living? Helena Blavatsky would have stood at this threshold and smiled with the calm of someone who has watched secrets wait for ripe minds. She taught that inner practices are the tools of transformation, and she honored rites that train attention as much as bodies. Listen with that spirit, and you will see the claim in two languages. The scientist's chart and the mystic's metaphor are telling the same story. The brain can grow new paths. BDNF, the protein that feeds neurons, is not a magic potion, but a biological soil. When the soil is richer, new shoots of thought and feeling can grow. That truth matters because most of us live with patterns that were wired in by repeated response, stress, or survival. Those patterns feel like facts. They are not. Think of your morning routine, the alarm, the rush, the coffee, the loop of worry on the commute. Now imagine inserting a 5-minute ritual, simple breath cycles, that changes how your nervous system reads threat. You arrive at work with less hum of anxiety, decisions come with less heavy charge, and small irritations slide off. Or imagine the end of the day. Instead of lying awake, your nervous system learns safety, and sleep follows more easily. These are not promises of instant miracles, but they are real reports from people who tried the protocol with care. A man who carried tension headaches for 15 years practiced the breath twice daily for 7 days and noticed the headaches dissolve. A veteran learned to replace a tightened readiness with a softer attention. An executive freed enough mental space to make a difficult decision with clarity instead of anxiety. These are small stories, but they map onto a larger possibility. Change is not only possible, it is practical. You may hold two responses at once, hope and caution. Hope because the idea that breath can shift brain chemistry empowers action. Caution because rapid rewiring can feel destabilizing. Some neuroscientists warn that sudden shifts in neural patterns must be integrated carefully. The brain protects us by looping familiar responses, even when they cause harm. When a new rhythm loosens those loops, emotions and memories can surface. You may feel warmth, a tingling in your hands, a quieting of background chatter, or you may feel disorientation for a moment. This is part of the territory. That is why a small ritual needs steady witness. Someone who watches without panic. Someone who keeps the practice simple and consistent. There is also a moral question in this discovery. The monks kept this sequence because they understood its power to reshape identity. When a tool changes consciousness, it changes responsibility. Will you use this practice to escape discomfort, to chase sensations, or to build steadier presence? The difference matters. The breath is not an anesthetic. It is an instrument for training attention and for guiding the nervous system towards safety. Use it with intention and the change you seek becomes plausible. Here is how it touches daily life in ways you can test. On a stressful morning, pause for 3 rounds. Notice the shift. Maybe your jaw loosens. Music becomes less intrusive. A tightness in your chest softens. At mid-afternoon, when coffee and deadlines conspire, spend 5 minutes on the pattern. You return to tasks with clear focus. Before bed, the same breath can tell the body it is safe to rest. These small interruptions to autopilot are, in effect, letters to your nervous system that say, "You may relax now." Over days, those letters accumulate. The brain reads them and rewrites the ichai, patterns that keep you tense. Another practical truth: most people overbreathe. They fill lungs with shallow, quick breaths that keep CO2 too low and maintain a state of mild alarm. The 5-5-5 pattern, inhale 5 seconds, hold 5, exhale 5, creates a specific balance of oxygen and carbon dioxide that signals safety and activates the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is a highway between brain and body. When it receives the right signals, It engages the parasympathetic system, the one that calms heart rate and digestion and invites rest. That is the physiological explanation, but the experience is what will convince you. The first time you do it properly, you might feel a gentle sweep of relief as the parasympathetic system wakes and the mind quiets. If you have been skeptical, here is a simple invitation that is also a commitment device. Write in the comments this sentence right now: I breathe to rewire my brain. Typing that line names you as an actor in your own change. Psychology shows that when we publicly declare a commitment, we are more likely to follow through. Saying it is not an empty act. It is a small pledge to yourself and to the community that this channel is forming. You will not be alone. Others will write it, and their presence will strengthen your resolve. And there is more. If you feel called, click the red button in the corner of the screen. Only the chosen will click the red button. This is not arrogance, it is an initiation. By clicking, you subscribe and step into a group that treats this practice with seriousness and devotion. The red button is a small threshold. Cross it, and you receive not a promise of magic, but the support of a network, reminders, and ongoing teachings. Be aware. This is for those who choose practice over passive consumption. Click if you are ready to be chosen, to be part of a disciplined few who will do the work and testify. Do not rush to mastery. The most profound change happens through care, not force. Start small, twice a day, 5 to 10 minutes total. Notice the signs: tingling hands, warmth in the chest, a sense of spaciousness in the mind. Keep a journal. Readiness and consistency are the twin engines of transformation. If you feel disoriented, slow the practice and sit with the sensations. If memories or emotions surface, do not be afraid. Simply observe and breathe. Integration is the companion of rapid change. There is suspense in this moment because what comes next will explain the exact method and the science in clear terms. But before that, hold the image of your life adjusted by small breath acts. A softer morning, clearer decisions, less pain, sleep that sustains. Ready yourself for the choice that matters now. Write in the comments: I breathe to rewire my brain. Click the red button if you are chosen. These acts are small, but they make you accountable. They align your intention with the practice. And when you return, you will find that a simple pattern of breath opened doors you thought were fixed. The moment you begin to practice the breath with full attention, the routine of your day changes in a subtle, decisive way. The 5C5-to-5 method is simple to describe and harder to do well. It asks for 3 things at once: presence, precision, and patience. Presence means you bring your attention to the body. Precision means you follow the counts and posture that shape the nervous response. Patience means you repeat the practice with quiet consistency. And do not chase dramatic sensations. People want quick fireworks. This is deeper work. Steady pressure applied to the nervous system until it yields. New circuits. Start with your posture. Sit with a straight spine, whether on a chair or on the floor. Imagine a thread pulling the crown of your head gently upward. Shoulders should be relaxed down away from the ears. Place your hands on your knees, palms up. This hand position is not mystical. It opens the chest and encourages full diaphragmatic breathing. Keep the jaw soft and the face relaxed. The point is not to strain into a pose, but to create an alert, open body that supports calm breath. Now the pattern. Inhale through the nose for a slow count of 5. Fill the lungs in a 3-part motion. First the belly rises, then the lower ribs expand, then the upper chest breathes in. Press the tip of your tongue lightly to the roof of your mouth, just behind the front teeth. This small action stimulates nerve pathways that enhance vagal tone and attention. Hold the breath comfortably at the top for a count of 5. Keep the tongue in place, then open your mouth slightly and exhale slowly for 5 seconds, letting the jaw drop and the shoulders relax. That is 1 round. Many people perform the pattern mechanically, like a machine repeating a rhythm without feeling. Try to keep awareness of how breath moves in the body. Notice the soft stretch in the diaphragm. Notice how the exhale feels, like a letting go. Do not force the counts. If 5 seconds feels too long at first, reduce them and build up. The exact ratio matters. But the most important factor is that you are steady and relaxed rather than tense and hurried. What small resistance is rising when you try to hold still for 5 seconds? After a few rounds, you will notice bodily signs: a warmth in the chest, a subtle tingling in the fingers, a sense of space behind the eyes. These are normal and are signs of the nervous system shifting toward the parasympathetic state. For some people, these sensations are welcome. For others, they are unfamiliar and a bit unsettling. If memories or emotions surface, do not be surprised. Rapid changes in neural patterns can release held material. When that happens, breathe with curious acceptance. Observe the emotion like a guest. Let it move, and continue the pattern at a gentle pace. Practice details matter. Breath should be smooth and controlled. Avoid gulping air or forcing the inhale. Keep the throat open. The hold at the top should feel natural, not a strain. The exhale should be longer if possible, because slowing the exhale promotes parasympathetic activation. You will sometimes feel a small dizziness when you change your breathing habits. If that occurs, pause, breathe normally for a moment, and then resume with gentler counts. Safety and comfort are primary. How will you respond when the first strong emotion emerges during the breath? Integration is not only physiological, it is psychological. The 5-5-5 protocol rewires neural pathways precisely because it trains your attention to a new rhythm. Attention is the currency of learning. When you choose to hold your awareness on breath, you strengthen the pathways that support calm focus. Over days and weeks, the pattern becomes a new default. You will find that stressors no longer trigger the old automatic loop as often. Instead of immediate reactivity, you begin to get a moment, a gap between stimulus and response. That gap is where choice returns. There is an ethical layer here. The monks kept this work silent for reasons beyond secrecy. They valued readiness. Change in consciousness without readiness can unbalance a life. That is why the practice is best held with humility. Use it to create safety and clarity, not as a way to escape responsibilities or relationships. If you notice the breath is lifting you away from needed tasks or social obligations, scale back and integrate the practice into your ordinary life, not in place of it. What truth about your life will become visible when the noise quiets? Begin with a realistic schedule. 2 sessions a day works well, 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening. Each session can be 5 to 10 minutes. If you are time poor, 3 rounds in the morning and 3 in the evening are enough to start producing shifts. Keep a simple log. Note the day, the time, and 1 word about how you felt afterwards. Calmer, clearer, tense, distracted. Over time, you will see patterns emerge. Days you are distracted, days you are grounded. This record will be valuable because the brain responds to consistent input. Expect early signs within 48 hours for some people. Better sleep, reduced reactivity to small annoyances, less background tension. By day 7, many report clearer thinking and a reduction in chronic headaches. By 3 weeks, with 10 minutes daily, the brain has had repeated opportunity to form new neural pathways. You are not guaranteed dramatic changes, but you are very likely to notice steady improvements if you practice with honesty. What will you choose when you face a day with zero motivation to practice? There are common errors that slow progress. First, people try to force dramatic sensations. Sensations may come, but chasing them reduces integration. Second, some breathe too shallowly or too fast between rounds. Maintain slow rhythm. Third, posture matters more than you think. Slumping compresses the diaphragm and reduces lung capacity. Fourth, many skip the hold because it feels awkward. The hold is not optional. It is the physiological mechanism that shifts CO2 slightly and signals the nervous system differently. Do it gently. To help you stay steady, use small rituals that anchor the practice. Choose a consistent chair or a corner of a room. Keep a cushion or a small object you associate with practice. Light a candle if that helps you remain present. Rituals are psychological tools that reduce resistance and cue the brain for change. They are not mystical add-ons. They are scaffolding for new habits. When will you honor the small rituals that support a large change? The physiological explanation is simple and important. Most modern humans overbreathe in daily life. Quick, shallow breaths keep CO2 levels low. Low CO2 changes blood chemistry and primes a vigilant nervous state. The 5-5-5 pattern intentionally balances oxygen and carbon dioxide in a way that signals safety to the brain. The brief hold increases CO2 modestly and prompts a cascade of chemical changes that support BDNF release and vagal activation. The vagus nerve then tells the heart and digestive system to slow and recover. This is the body's language of safety. You might still be suspicious. How can a few minutes of breath alter decades of pattern? The answer is repetition and attention. Neural circuits strengthen with use. Every time you choose a new breath rhythm and keep your attention there, the brain lays down a new track. The old tracks fade through disuse. It takes time, but the pathway of change is clear. Input, attention, repetition, new wiring. What will you do when the brain asks for the old narrative back? There are stories that illustrate this subtle work. A woman in her 50s carried a chronic shoulder pain that doctors had labeled structural. She practiced 5-5-5 twice daily for 3 weeks. The pain reduced dramatically, not because her shoulder bones changed, but because the brain changed how it interpreted sensation. A man with a history of panic attacks used the breath at the first hint of a panic pattern. Within months, the attacks lessened in frequency and intensity. A leader at a company used short midday sessions before meetings and noticed clearer judgment and calmer delivery. These accounts are small, but they point to a pattern. Attention trained on breath translates into wider life effects. How will you tell the story of your life differently after 3 weeks of consistent practice? Some people will experience discomfort during change. Old pain can rise as neural patterns shift. Memories, sadness, or a sense of grief may surface. This is not a failure of the technique. It is often a sign that contact with held material is being restored. When this happens, treat yourself kindly. Slow the practice, sit with the sensations, and if needed, seek support from a therapist or a trusted friend. Rapid rewiring without integration is risky. Integration is the work that makes change sustainable. Can you be brave enough to meet what surfaces and kind enough to seek help? There are ways to deepen the practice safely. Combine breath with mindful journaling. After each session, write 2 lines, what you noticed in the body, and 1 word for the emotional tone. This tiny ritual converts felt experience into narrative, allowing the conscious mind to process what arises. Another option is to pair breath with simple movement, like gentle neck rolls or shoulder lifts before the session. Movement helps release physical tension and prepares the nervous system to receive the breath. Do you see how a small daily pattern can become a full partnership with your nervous system? Do not expect perfection. Missed days will happen. There will be periods of busyness and doubt. The important step is to return to practice without self-judgment. The brain responds to cumulative input, not to punishment. When you return, notice the difference between berating yourself and recommitting with kindness. The latter is far more effective. What will your patience look like when the brain rewires in its own time? Finally, consider your identity. This work is not simply about reducing symptoms. It is about the quiet expansion of capacity. Capacity for calm, for clear decision, for presence. When attention shifts from reactive storylines to chosen responses, your life story begins to change. You will not be the same person in small ways. You will notice how you hold space for others, how you tolerate stress, how you meet your own anxiety. The breath is not a magic wand. It is a tool for deep remodeling. Are you ready to be a different kind of self? A more steady mind in a shifting world? The first time the breath pattern takes you somewhere new, it arrives like a small, undeniable fact. Your shoulders drop a fraction, your thoughts narrow to a simpler edge, and a strange warmth spreads under the breastbone. People describe it differently. Tingling in the fingertips, a hollow of calm behind the eyes, the mind's static thinning. But the message is similar. The body is answering. There is a physiological story to that answer, and a human story. Between them lies the reason this practice matters. On the physiological side, the 5-5-5 sequence intentionally changes the balance of oxygen and carbon dioxide in your blood. Most of us live with habitual shallow breathing that keeps CO2 lower than the body prefers. Low CO2 can keep the nervous system keyed to alertness. When you inhale slowly, hold briefly, and then exhale with a soft length, you allow CO2 to rise just enough to change blood chemistry in a way the brain reads as safe. That small chemical nudge activates the vagus nerve, the cranial highway linking heart, lungs, gut, and brain. When the vagus engages, heart rate can slow, digestion feels easier, and the system shifts from fight or flight toward rest and repair. This is not magic. It is simple biology used with a new intent. BDNF, the brain-derived neurotrophic factor, acts like fertilizer for neurons. When it increases, neurons sprout new connections. When it drops, circuits stay stuck on old instructions. Modern labs, including the Stanford study you've heard about, have measured dramatic rises in BDNF with specific breathwork patterns. That is why people report changes in cognition and pain that used to seem permanent. Pain, it turns out, is often a neural habit. The brain learns to create and repeat pain signals even after tissue heals. When you give the nervous system different input, the brain can learn new ways to interpret sensation. That is neuroplasticity in action. Yet the biology is only half of the story. The other half is how the experience lands in your life. Imagine a woman who has carried a tension headache for 15 years. She has tried medication, physiotherapy, and endless doctor visits. After a week of the 5-5-5 practice twice a day, she notices the steady ache loosens. It is not an immediate miracle that erases history. It is a slow reassembly. She reports less rumination and a clarity that helps her make better choices at work. Or consider a veteran who has lived with a high baseline of vigilance so long that it felt like a permanent wiring. Short breath sessions give him a few more seconds between trigger and reaction. In those seconds, he can choose different responses. A CEO, exhausted by constant meetings, uses short lunchtime rounds to center and finds decision-making becomes easier, less frantic. These stories are not universal guarantees, but they are useful models. Small rituals change how people feel and act in measurable ways. There is a global context to this. Chronic pain affects a significant portion of the world's population. Roughly 1 in 5 people live with long-term pain, and the strain of that on individuals and health systems is immense. Mental health conditions like anxiety and depression touch hundreds of millions globally and are often bound up with dysregulated nervous systems. Practices that cheaply and safely shift physiology are not a cure-all, but they are powerful tools in a larger toolkit. Breathwork is accessible, no equipment, low cost, and possible anywhere. That accessibility makes it worth exploring widely, while also inviting responsibility in how it is taught and used. A surprising fact: the exhale is often more important than the inhale for calming the nervous system. The parasympathetic system prefers a longer exhale because it signals a permitted release. Many breathing trends emphasize deep inhales. This protocol privileges balance and the gentle holding pause that produces the chemical conditions for growth factor release. Another unexpected point: tiny actions like placing the tongue crest E against the roof of the mouth stimulate neural pathways that boost vagal tone. These are not mystical tricks, but small somatic cues that shape neural input. When sensations arise during practice, dizziness, a flood of emotions, memories, do not assume the technique failed. Rapid shifts in neural patterns can dislodge held material. That is why integration matters. If a memory or grief surfaces, simple steps help. Soften the practice, breathe gently, and observe without judgment. If intense feelings continue, seek support from a clinician or therapist. The work becomes safer and more sustainable when you pair the practice with care and community. Consistency matters. You will not overhaul decades of pattern in a single breath, but repetition is the engine of change. In the first 48 hours, many people notice subtle shifts. Sleep improves, small irritations feel less sharp, mornings are less jarring. By day 7, clearer thinking and reduced. Frequency of certain pains are common. After 3 weeks of 10 minutes a day, the brain has had repeated exposure to the new rhythm and begins to favor those circuits. This timeline is not an iron law, but it is a practical map. It asks for patience while promising progress. Stories make the timeline real. One man reported that headaches that had resisted medicines and even Botox for years disappeared within 7 days of twice-daily practice. He did not stop his other treatments. The breath was an addition, a lever the brain could use. Another person, in his 60s, feared cognitive decline. After 3 weeks of consistent breathing, he found clarity returning and tasks that once felt daunting becoming manageable again. These are anecdotal, but they suggest how neural habits can reverse. Global statistics add scale to these accounts. Consider that stress-related disorders lead to billions of lost workdays annually, and that poor sleep and chronic pain are major drivers of healthcare costs worldwide. Interventions that increase resilience, reduce reactivity, and improve sleep have ripple effects on productivity, relationships, and long-term health burdens. Breathwork will not replace medical care when needed, but its low cost and ease make it a candidate for broader public health consideration. You may wonder, what mistakes slow progress? Many. The most common is treating the eye. Breath like a quick fix. Practice done to chase a sensation is practice for a sensation, not for change. Another error is inconsistency. Too often people practice one day and forget the next. A third mistake is ignoring posture. Slumped alignment limits diaphragmatic movement and reduces effectiveness. Finally, skipping the hold undermines the physiological cascade you want to create. These mistakes are easy to correct with small commitments. There are practical ways to integrate the practice. Use the morning session as a foundation. 3 rounds after waking to set a calmer tone for the day. Use an afternoon session as a reset. 5 minutes before a tough meeting can shrink the adrenaline spike and lead to clearer decisions. Use an evening session to prepare the body for sleep. Keep a simple log with dates and one-word notes about the session outcome. These small structures build momentum. An unexpected insight comes from combining breath work with movement. Gentle spinal twists, neck rolls, or shoulder circles before the breathing session release physical tension that the breath then completes. Movement primes the nervous system to accept new rhythms. Another useful tool is journaling. 2 lines after a session, one describing a physical sensation, one naming an emotion, helps the conscious mind process what the nervous system releases. This integration turns somatic shifts into narrative understanding. There is a moral dimension here. Tools that change consciousness ask us to use them wisely. The monks who preserved these methods did so because they recognized the ethical weight of altering attention. When your nervous system becomes more flexible, your capacity for empathy, patience, and insight increases. Use that capacity to live more responsibly, not merely to chase comfort. The breath will reveal parts of yourself you may avoid: fear, regret, longing. Meeting them with curiosity is the ethical core of this work. You might ask, will this make me less myself? It can, if yourself is defined by reactivity and fear. But that is the point. The practice lets you choose which parts of yourself guide your life. Small daily acts of attention reorient identity gradually. You will still be you, but you may be more anchored, less hijacked by old triggers. That is not loss, it is refinement. Safety remains a priority. If you have cardiovascular issues, respiratory problems, or a history of seizures, consult a medical professional before intensive practice. For emotional safety, have support available if intense material surfaces. Practice gently and with curiosity. The evidence in laboratories is growing and the human stories are meaningful. But the true test is personal. Try it with patience and note what changes. Expect small victories and occasional setbacks. Keep a record. Ask for help when needed. The breath is a simple instrument, but used well, it is transformative. What will you do with the moments that open when the brain loosens old patterns? Will you use the clarity to repair relationships, to take long postponed actions, to rest more fully? The breath gives you seconds and minutes, a new margin where choice becomes possible. Those small margins are the raw material of a different life. You have arrived at a choice point. The path we open together, where a simple rhythm of breath meets deep biology and ancient care, now asks you to make it real. Reflection alone will not rewire your brain. Intention without a plan will not change entrenched neural habits. What you need is a gentle, practical strategy that honors the mind's fragility, the body's pace, and your life's responsibilities. Below is such a plan, clear, steady, and built to help you carry small acts of attention into lasting change. Read it slowly. Make it yours. Begin where you are, not where you imagine you should be. Begin with a short commitment. 10 minutes a day, divided into 2 sessions of 5 minutes. Morning and evening are the natural anchors. Morning practice calms the nervous tone you carry into the day. Evening practice prepares the body for sleep and integration. For the first week, keep the commitment sacred. Put it on your calendar as an appointment labeled with a purpose. Rewire. Treat it as non-negotiable because new neural habits form in a climate of consistent input. Create a simple environment to support those 5 minutes. Choose a chair or a corner of a room. Sit with an upright spine. Imagine a light thread lifting the crown of your head. Place your hands on your knees, palms up to open the chest. Have a cushion, a small object, or a soft light that signals practice time. These small cues reduce decision friction and tell your brain that something important is about to happen. Ritualize without ceremony. The goal is habit, not show. Practice the 5-5-5 with care. Inhale through the nose for 5 seconds, moving belly, ribs, chest. Hold gently for 5 seconds with the tongue resting at the roof of the mouth behind the front teeth. Exhale softly for 5 seconds through a slightly open mouth, letting the jaw drop and shoulders relax. If 5 seconds feels too long at first, adjust to a ratio that is comfortable, such as 4-4-4, and increase gradually. The quality of the breath matters more than strict timing. Aim for smoothness and relaxation. Observe and record. Keep a 1-line log after each session. Record the date, time, and 1 word about how you felt. Calm, tense, clear, foggy. That small discipline creates feedback and accountability. Over days, you will see patterns emerge. Days when practice lands. Easily, days when it resists. Celebrate consistency more than intensity. Missing a day is not failure. Returning without judgment is practice. Add micro habits that support integration. Before your breath work, do a gentle movement sequence. Neck rolls, shoulder circles, or a soft spine twist for 1 minute. Movement helps release physical holding that the breath will then complete. After the session, spend 30 seconds writing 2 lines. 1 sentence about a bodily sensation and 1 sentence about an emotion or thought that arose. This simple journaling translates somatic shifts into conscious understanding, which aids integration. Build social accountability. Tell a friend, partner, or small group that you will practice twice daily for 2 weeks and ask them to check in. Public commitment increases follow-through. If you prefer privacy, join an online community or a comments thread where others share brief progress updates. Community nourishes perseverance and curiosity. Use the practice strategically. Apply it proactively. 3 rounds before a stressful meeting, 5 minutes at the first sign of worry, a short session before bed to downshift into sleep. The technique creates a gap between stimulus and response. Use that gap to choose rather than react. Over time, those small choices add up into a different default. Respect the fluctuations. Rapid neural shifts can surface emotion, memories, or discomfort. If intense feelings arise, slow the practice and breathe gently. Tenderness matters. Do not push for dramatic experiences. If material persists or becomes destabilizing, seek support from a therapist, mental health professional, or trusted guide. The breath is powerful. Integration with support is wise. Measure progress with simple metrics. Track sleep quality, irritability levels, pain intensity, and decision clarity on a weekly scale from 1 to 10. These self-measures are imperfect but useful. They help you see change where it might otherwise feel invisible. Expect small wins within 48 hours for some, better sleep, less reactivity, and more durable shifts over 3 weeks of consistent practice. Be patient with the mind's resistance. The brain prefers familiarity. Old circuits will call for attention, sometimes loudly. When the old patterns surface, respond with curiosity rather than condemnation. Ask, what is this pattern? Trying to protect? Where did it learn that logic? Respond with the breath and a note in your journal. Over time, the new rhythm, The rhythm of intention will rewrite the old maps. Integrate the new self into your life. Use the clarity you gain to repair strained conversations, to limit trivial distractions, and to prioritize rest. The breath will give you seconds and minutes of margin. Fill those margins with chosen acts, a calm reply instead of an immediate retort, a pause before deciding, an early bedtime when fatigue calls. These practical choices turn internal shifts into real-world outcomes. Maintain ethical intention. The ability to change attention is a kind of power. Use it to increase kindness, presence, and responsibility, rather than to detach from obligations or avoid growth. The breath is not a drug or a way to escape life's demands. It is a tool to meet them more fully. Plan for maintenance. After a month of steady practice, you can reduce formal practice to 10 minutes a day if needed, but keep at least 3 times a week as touch points. The brain needs ongoing input to sustain new pathways. Consider a monthly audit. Review your logs, reflect on changes, and set small goals for the next month. If you face obstacles, adapt rather than abandon. If mornings never work, swap to 2 evening sessions. If 5 minutes feels impossible, start with 2 minutes. The exact form is flexible. The discipline of return is what matters. Celebrate quietly. Small rituals deserve acknowledgement. At the end of each week, take a breath, place a hand over your heart, and note one small change. More sleep, less pain, a kinder response to a child, a clearer decision. These are the real markers of progress. Finally, choose compassion. Change is a human process of fits and starts. Treat yourself as you would a friend embarking on a hard, meaningful project. You are not chasing perfection. You are cultivating capacity. If this plan resonates, take 3 immediate small steps right now. Write the commitment below. I will practice 5-5-5 twice daily for 7 days. Put it on your calendar. Find your practice spot, and then begin, right where you sit. If this work has touched you, please support the channel. Subscribe to receive more practical guidance and stories that help you integrate the practice into daily life. Like the video if you found value here. Share your questions or personal experiences in the comments, anonymously if you prefer, so this community can learn together. Your notes help others feel seen and make the practice stronger for everyone. We are moving together, one breath at a time. Thank you for your attention, your courage, and your patience. Your nervous system remembers care. Begin again now.